delay due to technical reasons. Good morning to you all, and we are getting on to our sixth day of hearings. Before we proceed, I ask our religious leaders to offer prayers, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين إن الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين الله الذي جعل لكم الأرض قرارا والسماء بناء وصوركم فأحسن صوركم ورزقكم من طيبات ذلكم الله ربكم فتبارك الله رب العالمين هو الحي لا إله إلا هو فأدعوه مخلصين له الدين الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Lord God of all creation, we thank you once again for seeing us throughout the past day and for bringing us to the beginning of a new day, whereby we continue the business of the TRRC. We ask that tranquility, equity, and your goodness will cover the proceedings of this meeting, so that each and everything will be conducted in a peaceful atmosphere to your honor and your glory. This we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abubacar, and thank you, Imam Jallo. We will start our proceedings for the day. Lead counsel, Mr. Fall, are you ready?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, all. Yes, we are ready. Next witness is waiting in the witness hall. Kindly call the witness, please. And Ms. Horeja Balagay would lead this witness. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Can I ask that the witness is given the oath?
I, Abubacar Jeng,
I, Abubacar Jeng,
swear that I'll speak the truth,
swear that I will speak the truth,
the whole truth,
and
nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You may be seated, Mr. Jeng. Good morning to you and welcome to the Commission.
Good morning, Council. Good morning, Council.
As you know, my name is Horeja Balagay, and I will be questioning you on behalf of the Commissioners. May I just draw your attention to the interpretation and transcription system? Because there's simultaneous interpretation into the local languages, whenever it's my turn to speak, I will switch on the mic. After that, I'll switch it off, and you can take a couple of seconds, switch yours on, and then respond. So that way it will give the interpreters enough time to interpret.
Council, noted accordingly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeng. Today, your testimony will cover a number of areas. I'll just give you a brief overview of how I intend to proceed. I will begin with your qualifications, your academic qualifications, and your work experience. Then we will address the structure and organization of the Gambia Police Force. We will also address the events of the 1994 coup d'etat, as well as any information you have about how the events were unfolding at the time. We will also talk about what, if anything, happened to you during that time. And then we will discuss the issue of institutional reforms. Is that clear?
Very much clear, Council.
Thank you very much. Can you please state your full name?
My given names are Abubacar Sulayman Jeng.
What is your date of birth, Mr. Jeng?
3rd September 1963.
Without specifying your exact address, where do you live?
I reside in Brusubi.
I would like to focus on your education and career background up until 1994. Can you please tell us where you went to school, what did you study, as well as your career up until 1994?
I did my primary school education at Canifing School. I later went to Latrikunda Secondary Technical School.
Apologies, could you please cite the dates as well, or the year when you went to school at Canifing?
Okay, Canifing from 1970 to 76. From 76 to 1980, Latrikunda Secondary Technical School. Before I proceeded to Ghana in 1980 to 1983 at Aswansi Technical College. I returned in 1983 and enrolled at the Gambia Technical Training Institute and did an advanced diploma there. I also re-enrolled again in 1984 and did an advanced teacher certificate training and taught briefly at Gambia High School and St. Peter's respectively, 1985, 86, and I departed this country in late 86, 87 to the United Kingdom, where I also furthered my education. I first went to Polytechnic of Central London, where I did systems analysis on IT computers. I also went to London University at Development Research Institute, where I did a postgraduate diploma in business administration. Following that, before that, when I did my systems analyst training, I also went to Norway, Oslo, enrolled at the Maharishi International University, where I started undergraduate program on business administration. I only spent 1 year in the university and decided to return to UK. This is the time that I went to London University with the Development Research Institute and got my postgraduate diploma. And in 1993, and I decided to return to the Gambia and enlisted in the Gambia Police Force in April 1993. Additionally also, in 1999 to 2000, I did a master's program on crisis disaster management at the Royal Military College of Science, Cranfield University, now renamed as the UK, United Kingdom Defense Academy. I also went to the United States of America and pursued training with the Federal Bureau of Investigations at the FBI National Academy, where I did investigation techniques and training, and also acquired certificate in criminal justice and criminology.
Do you recall what year that was?
In 2003.
So I want to come back to when you enlisted with the Gambia Police Force. That was in April 1993. What was your rank when you started?
I took a conscious decision to return to the Gambia in 1993 without really knowing what I wanted to do when I am back in the Gambia. But an opportunity presented itself. In that, at the time, it was timely with the amalgamation of the then Gambia National Gendarmerie into the Gambia Police Force. There was a British advisor from the United Kingdom seconded to the Gambia and also a training officer, equally seconded to the Gambia from the United Kingdom. They, together with the police leadership at the time, wanted to give direction to the police, and there were a lot of reforms that were taking place. There was an opportunity for them to recruit graduates into the police. So there were two sets of cadets they wanted to entice to enlist into the Gambia Police Force, which was Cadet Assistant Superintendent of Police and Cadet Inspectors. Due to the fact that I had a postgraduate diploma, I decided to apply and I was considered for the Cadet Assistant Superintendent of Police, which is equivalent to second lieutenant in the ranks of the Army. And this is how I joined the Gambia Police Force. We were also the first batch to be recruited following the amalgamation. And I did my training at the Fajara Barracks at the time. Thank you.
I will come back to the issue of the amalgamation. Still focusing on you, your rank was cadet. I just want to find out about the training that you had between the period 1993 and 1994. What was your training after you joined?
There is what we call the initial basic training program for all recruits and individuals that are supposed to enlist into the Gambia Police Force. And I did my initial training at the Fajara Barracks, like I've indicated. And it ranged from different topics and aspects that have been taught during such training, which includes general policing matters and also weapons training. Those were the trainings that I have undergone at the initial basic training program.
And how long was that training? Sorry, your mic, please.
It's around 4 to 5 months, if I can recall.
So that training took place in 1993, is that correct?
93, correct.
And in 1994, when the coup d'etat took place, did you have the same rank or did your rank change?
I had the same rank.
I would like to focus on the structure and organization of the Gambia Police Force between 1993 and 1994. Can you tell us a bit about how the force was organized when you enlisted?
It was well structured. At the helm of things, there was an Inspector General of Police, supported by a Deputy Inspector General of Police, and there was also 2 Assistant Inspector General of Police, 1 for administration and 1 for operations.
Can you tell us the names of the individuals who occupied that post in 93 and 94?
Pasala Jeng was the Inspector General of Police. The Deputy Inspector General of Police, if I recall, was Dudu Juf. The 2 Assistant Inspector General of Police were Ibrahim Chongan and Bolisa, respectively.
And just to clarify, which aspects of the administration were they in charge of? You mentioned administration and operations. Who was in charge of which one?
Ibrahim Chongan was responsible for operations, and Bolisa responsible for administration.
You also mentioned Dudu Juf. Was he known by any other name?
He was fondly known as Kapi. because of his active engagement in sports.
Okay, you've told us a bit about the structure at the top. Can you tell us a bit about the different units within the police force at the time?
There were quite a good number of units, among which I can cite the divisional operational units that we had, because the country was then divided into 4 sectors. You have Banjul, you have Western Division, North Bank Division, South Bank Division, and Upper River Division. And each was also headed by a commissioner of police. When you come to the headquarters also, there were also other subunits. Namely, you had the serious crime, fraud squad, the prosecution unit, you have the CRO office, which stood for Criminal Registry Office or something like that. You had the Interpol at the time also. You had the records office. You also have finance, just to highlight some of these subunits that operated also. Including mobile traffic as well. And of course, there was also the tactical support group as a result of the amalgamation, and that was the arm wing of the police.
You mentioned that you were part of the first batch of recruits after the amalgamation. Can we talk a little bit about when the TSG was amalgamated? How did that unfold? Were there any issues in relation to that?
There was a policy requirement that cadets, following their successful completion of the initial training, there were key units that were identified for the cadets to go through. That is, in order to expose them to real policing work. My recollection, I think there were 5 of those units: prosecution, serious crime, fraud squad, having also an attachment in one of the police stations like Banjul Division, and also in the operations outfit of the police. At the time, in 1994, I had just completed my attachment with the mobile traffic, and I was going through the same process in the prosecution unit when the events of 1994 occurred. But specific to the question that you have asked, I will not describe it as rivalry. It did not also reach the level of aggro and animosity, but there was resentment from the old guard of the police as far as the manner and the way in which elements coming from the tactical support group were received into the police. I think perhaps it's a question of perception that the TSG elements were perhaps coming to overshadow them, because the reality at the time also was that the tactical support group had at the time a better organizational structure. Personnel were even also more qualified than what you had in the old guard of the police. Probably this is what necessitated that resentment, But I must highlight here that the police leadership was very much aware of this, and they were working diligently to address this issue that I've just highlighted. I don't know whether that paints the picture that you were looking for.
It does, and we will delve into it further. What were some of the measures that were being taken in order to address the issues that resulted from TSG being amalgamated into the police force?
Combination of factors, such as dialogue, discussions, reorientation, information flow, educating the people to understand that this is one entity, and there was only one aim and objective, which was to deliver police services to the nation. What also was done by the leadership at the time was evolving policy guidelines and ensuring also processes and procedures for people to understand the general framework of what the amalgamation was for, what it aims to achieve, and what were the steps that were required to be followed in order to ensure that this was achievable.
So how did it function between the TSG on the one hand and the rest of the police force on the other hand? Did they have different types of mandates at all? How did that function?
The mandate was the same, but operational duties may differ. There were elements from the TSG who were doing core policing work and activities.
What do you mean by that, sorry?
General policing matters, like being in an investigator or being in the mobile traffic or working in the stations. But at the same time, there was also the tactical support group, which was purely the arm wing of the police, and their duties was to respond to civil unrest or where you have emergencies and security developments that would require perhaps crowd control duties and activities. That function is currently similar to what the police intervention unit is doing at this material time. So basically, the work was the same, but duties may differ based on the nature and type of work that was required to be performed by a specific section or unit of the police. But it was overall one entity, one Gambia police force, under one command and leadership.
So you've explained that there was some tension between the TSG and the rest of the police force, and that measures were being taken to address them. Did it have an impact on the work of the police force overall?
Admittedly, it does, or it had. But I don't think the impact was such that it disrupted the smooth functioning of the police force as a whole. But there were issues, as I have highlighted. But it did not necessarily have a knock-on effect on the overall command and control of the entire police force. I even recall initiating some stopgap measures, because my batch was unique. Unique in the sense that we were the first to be trained following the amalgamation, and we saw ourselves as neutral in the sense that we did not belong to any of these camps. But we were symbolic of the amalgamation, so that made it easy for us to be able to bridge any gaps between the two entities. And to a larger extent, it was useful and successful.
You mentioned that the TSG was the armed wing of the police. What was it like in terms of weapons? Did the rest of the police force have access to weapons? What type of weapons did the police have?
If I can recall very well, the tactical support group had light weapons. Categories of these weapons were the Kalashnikov, commonly known as AK-47. There was also the SLR, self-loading rifle, in addition to the pistols, the mob pistols that senior officers mostly carry. But they were basic arms, if that answers the question that you posed.
It certainly does. Was there an armory, or rather the question is, where was the armory of the police?
The two main armories were located at Fajara Barracks, and there was also one at the Banjul Barracks.
One additional question in relation to Fajara Barracks. At the time, which were the security forces that were based at Fajara Barracks?
Tactical support group. But of course, we also had the police communication center there. Our radio communication was also situated there as well. Although there was a sub communication unit also at the main police headquarters, but the nucleus was at the Fajara Barracks.
In terms of the leadership of the TSG, can you tell us who were the leaders at the time, 93, 94?
If my memory serves me well, Turo Jaune, I think, was a chief superintendent. Of course, the general oversight rests with the Assistant Inspector General of Police for Operations, who was Ibrahim Chongan. But in terms of the day-to-day command and control, Chief Superintendent Turo Jaune was the head, supported by Superintendent Suare, Amadou Suare.
On the issue of civilian oversight of the police, can you explain to us which ministry was responsible for the police?
The Gambia Police Force was at the time under the Ministry of Interior.
And how did oversight of the Gambia Police Force function, if you do know at the time?
Aside of the immediate command from the police leadership and the overall oversight from the Ministry of Interior, in addition to the collaboration and network that was also available between the Gambia Police Force and the Ministry of Justice, there was no external oversight per se in terms of the work that the police did. I don't know whether that also answers the question.
It does. What about the issue of any discontent within the police force? Were there any issues separate from the TSG amalgamation? Were there any issues within the police force in relation to administrative challenges or structural issues?
There was, ranging from paucity of resources, lack of adequate training, financial support was also limited. But key to all of this is also the difficulties to attract professionals into the police service. I am not afraid to say unequivocally that there was a perception. The perception was that the police institution was seen as an institution for school dropouts and people who cannot do better in other sectors. And it will be important to also highlight that with the amalgamation of the tactical support group into the police, that brought about renewed synergy, and there were the telltale signs of the former glory and the status quo that the police had was being rekindled. But yes, going back to the original question, there were challenges, and the challenges range from lack of resources. It also included lack of training and attracting the right caliber and qualified people that were required in terms of establishing, maintaining, and operating a professional police service.
On the issue of the paucity of resources, what kinds of resources are you referring to, and what, if any, was the effect of that?
Both human and material resources, infrastructure, in fact, even as basic as the uniforms. You can imagine if you are issued 3 pairs of uniform for 1 year. When you profile and look at a police officer, it gives you a reflection of a mirror in terms of his profile and standing, the uniform that the individual wears. You may imagine if you have 3 uniforms for the whole year, there were even times when you will see the collar of the shirt being torn because of the amount of washing that that shirt has gone through. Trousers pale. Which doesn't portray a professional police force. Unless you strive to buy additional uniforms, then your outlook doesn't look attractive and good in the eyes of the people. It was an eyesore, if you look at the police officer at the time. Vehicles were also limited. Police stations were limited. Generally, there were serious gaps in terms of adequate resources to ensure a functional police service.
What about the issue of adequate training? You mentioned that there was a lack of adequate training. What do you mean by that?
Ability for individuals to go for external training were limited. The internal trainings that were also given were also limited as well. The stopgap could have been mentoring and coaching on the work, that is in-house training. But then again, you had situations where individuals that were in the driving seat know the work by heart and through experience, but impacting knowledge, transferring those skills to other individuals were a challenge because they lack the capacity of being able to play a mentor and coaching role. Perhaps the issue that was responsible for that was the level of the education at the time as well. But we have seen marked improvement over time that we are seeing more qualified people who are now coming in and are able to support individual in the absence of external training in terms of on-the-job mentoring and coaching. But it was a situation where there were people commanding certain units and sections, but lack the required qualification in terms of what is required to spearhead change and growth and development.
Considering all these challenges, and I'm still focused on the period 1993-1994, how would you describe the morale of the troops at the time? I'm sorry, of the police, rather.
In the scale of 1 to 100, I will say 60%. Sometimes we are required to give credit where credit dues. Notwithstanding the lack of resources that I have highlighted, the lack of the capable leaders also to drive that growth, there were still individual and group of police personnel who were committed and motivated in terms of providing security service delivery for the country.
What about the issue of promotions within the police force? Can you tell us about that?
Before the advent of July 1994, there was a codified policy. There were processes, procedures in terms of promotion. It was by merit. Not by political, tribal affiliation. How tall are you? How handsome are you? How ugly are you? It was by merit. And there was a process that was religiously followed in terms of career progression and promotion. For example, you were kind of assured that if you are diligent with your work, for example, if you are Assistant Superintendent of Police, within 3 years, 4 years, if you had been acquitting yourself as expected, you are guaranteed of a promotion to a next rank by merit. But that change following 1994, and we will talk about that as we proceed. But coming back to the original question, there was a system in place in terms of promotion.
So I want to come to July 1994. Do you recall the exact day when the coup took place?
July 1994.
Sorry, can you switch on your mic? Just the date, please.
22nd July, 1994, and I think it was a Friday as well.
Prior to that date, were you aware of any rumors of coups being circulated around?
The fact that I was working at the police headquarters, you hear tidbits here that there was an incident at the airport where the military police were searched, stripped off their weapons. It was scanty and sketchy. But yeah, of course, I have heard about an incident at the airport at the time, but not a full-scale, detailed account of what really transpired.
Bearing in mind the mandate of the police, when those rumors were circulated, or when you heard those rumors, did the police see itself as having to take any measures in relation to those rumors?
I may not be in a position to answer that question because at the time I was not part of the police senior command and leadership. I was on attachment at the prosecution unit. Perhaps it has taken place, perhaps it hasn't. But I am not in a position to accurately answer that question. But my guess is, that's a hunch. We had a capable leadership at the time in terms of the command and control, and I am just of the view that they will not overlook such an incident. But to what extent and what they have done, I am not privy and aware of that.
But just focusing on your understanding of the mandate of the police force at the time, would you have expected that certain measures take place in relation to rumors that a coup d'etat was imminent?
Talking about the mandate of the police, in situations such as the one you have just highlighted, there is a limited role that the police can play. Number one, this was the Gambian National Army. The police does not have any jurisdiction as far as military personnel are concerned. Even if a police officer sees a military officer committing an aberration or a crime or whatever, the police is not in a position to arrest a military officer. That is why they have their military police, who has the responsibility to do so. The best that could be done is identify who did what and then subsequently report it to their chain of command and they deal with it. But our powers were limited as far as the work of the military is concerned. And then again, in situations like this, the National Intelligence Agencies, which is the NIA, had more role even to play than the police.
What was its name at the time, the National Intelligence?
I think it was NSS. National Security Services or something like that.
So coming to the events of 22nd July 1994 itself, can you tell us about that day? What happened in the morning?
On all accounts, it was a normal day. I left for work in the morning. I think I should have been at the police headquarters at around 7:30, 7:45, because it was standard practice that every morning before we commence our work, we have a morning parade at the back of the police headquarters building, during which a senior officer will brief those personnel that were operating at the police headquarters on various issues, events, and security-related matters. We had the briefing, the normal morning parade, and went back to carry out our daily functions. But we were subsequently summoned again to all report back to the parade ground.
Do you recall what time that was?
Around 9 o'clock, if my recollection is true to the point. And we all assembled, and we were addressed by the Assistant Inspector General of Police for Operations, Ibrahim Chongan, who briefed the parade that there is report of mutiny by elements of the Gambian National Army, and measures has been taken in order to ensure that there is no spillover, because they were marching towards the seat of government, which was the city of Banjul.
Did he explain what type of measures had been taken?
The critical one was the deployment of the tactical support group at the Denton Bridge. He also instructed that there was a need for fortification of the police headquarters. I guess in anticipation of the soldiers that were marching towards the city. And this task was further delegated to the officer commanding Banjul Division at the time, who happened to be Mr. Jibril Juf. Chongan subsequently, the Assistant Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Chongan, subsequently left. And we were further briefed by the officer commanding Banjul Division. He also gave further instructions that the directive that was issued by the Assistant Inspector General of Police should be carried out. I was detailed with the late Assistant Superintendent of Police, Khalifa Bajinka, and the Regimental Sergeant Major. I know in my statement I have given his name as Bakari Sane, but I'm not quite sure whether he was the Regimental Sergeant Major after a reflection at the time. But what is important is myself, Assistant Superintendent of Police Khalifa Bajinka, and the Regimental Sergeant Major at the time. I may be confusing the name, whether it was Bakari Sane or not, were tasked to collect some arms and ammunition from the Banjul barracks. And the objective was to reinforce the security of the physical security of the police headquarters. If I can recall, I think we did 2 or 3 rounds of movement to collect arms from the Banjul barracks to the police station.
Sorry, where was the barracks located? Where in Banjul?
In Banjul, I think it was at Mosque Road in Banjul. When we brought the arms, they were issued to qualified people who were authorized to carry firearm. What do I mean by that? Generally, it is not every police officer that is required to carry a firearm. Carriage of firearm requires the right training in order to be able to secure, operate the weapon concerned. So there are some personnel within the police who are not allowed to carry arms. The importance that is also attached to carriage of firearms could further be illustrated with the fact that there is even requirement for firearm qualification every year. If you are a firearm bearer, you must be certified to do so, and this is done annually to be able to carry firearms. So coming back to the narrative, those who were qualified to carry firearms were issued with the firearms.
Sorry, what type of firearms? You told us before what was in the armory. I just want to know what types of firearms were issued.
Assault rifle, the Kalashnikov AK-47. Strategic positions were also identified and manned by personnel of the Tactical Support Group. Key locations within the police headquarters, atop of the roof, the corridors, the verandas, the main entrance were all secured. And then the 2 main junctions leading to the police headquarters, I guess that was Cameroon, whatever, and the other side, I'm forgetting, because again, the street names have also been changed, so they are redundant now. But there was tactical and key deployment at these points that I have outlined.
So you had the briefing around 9 o'clock in the morning, and the police deployed at various strategic locations with their weapons. Do you remember around what time this was?
This should be around 10:30.
During that period, where were you located?
I was at the police headquarters.
What happened next?
We were at the police headquarters with these deployments in place. And of course, everybody was attentively and keenly following events. Information was trickling in as regards to the activities and movement of the mutinous.
How was the information trickling in? Through which communication means?
By word of mouth and also group discussions, but most importantly also we had our radio communications as well, and there was transmission at the time. At this time, they have not taken over the nucleus of the communication center in Fajara Barracks.
What type of information were you receiving?
That they were progressively moving towards Banjul. At one stage, we were told that Fajara Barracks collapsed without any resistance. At another time, we were also informed of the standoff at the Denton Bridge, where the group that came to the bridge had a standoff, and there was negotiations between them and the individual who was leading the deployment of the tactical support group at the Denton Bridge, who happens to be Superintendent Amadou Suare. Subsequently, we received information that they've been able to cross that last defensive position, and they are now moving towards the State House. Eventually, we were told that the seat of government has fallen into the hands of the mutinous. Before around 5 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock about, when some members of the mutinous arrived at the police station, at the police headquarters. I think which was the last position to have also subsequently fallen over to them.